In the medieval kingdom of Vesperia, where misty forests hide ancient secrets and stone castles loom over market towns, werewolves walk among humans in plain sight. For 300 years, the Alpha King has ruled all packs without a mate, but an old prophecy whispers of change. His true queen will be human-born, star-marked, and rogue saved. Tonight, as the blood moon eclipse approaches, that prophecy is about to come true. This is the story of Lyric Voss, a simple apothecary who rescued a starving boy from the market, and by nightfall found herself claimed as queen by the most dangerous predator in the realm.
The autumn sun was setting over Eldermore Market, painting the cobblestones in shades of crimson and gold. Lyric Voss stood behind her modest apothecary stall, arranging jars of herbs and tonics with practiced efficiency. At 22, she'd learned to survive on her wits and her remedies. Orphaned at 9, raised by the grudging charity of her godmother, she'd built this small business from nothing. 3 coppers for the fever tonic, Mistress Voss, a fishmonger's wife said, pressing coins into her palm. You're a godsend. Lyric pocketed the coins with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. 3 coppers wouldn't buy bread for 2 days. Times were hard in Vesperia. Harvests had failed, taxes had climbed, and the whispers never stopped. Wolves in the whispering woods, rogues attacking livestock, bodies found in the morning drained of blood. But Lyric didn't believe in monsters. Not anymore.
"Don't stay past dusk, Lyric," Tam the baker called as he loaded his cart. "Town guards doubled patrols. Something's got them spooked." She waved him off, already scanning the thinning crowd. That's when she noticed the boy. He was filthy, maybe 8 years old, crouched in the shadows behind the soap maker's stall. His clothes hung in tatters, his feet were bare and bleeding, but his eyes were the strangest silver color, bright as polished steel, and they were fixed on the honey cakes cooling on her counter with the desperate intensity of someone who hadn't eaten in days. Before Lyric could call out to him, he moved. The boy lunged forward, his thin hand snatching a honey cake from her stall. Crumbs scattered across the cobblestones. Lyric's hand shot out instinctively, but instead of grabbing him, she stopped herself. The child flinched, clearly expecting to be struck. His whole body trembled with fear. Instead of shouting, instead of calling for the guard, Lyric did something that surprised even herself. She picked up her last honey cake, broke it in half, and held both pieces out to him. "Here," she said softly, "take them both." The boy stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. His silver eyes were wide, disbelieving. Then his trembling hands reached out and took the offered food. He devoured both pieces in 3 desperate bites, honey smearing across his cracked lips. Lyric crouched down to his level, keeping her movements slow and non-threatening. "When did you last eat?" The boy's silver eyes flickered toward the darkening sky. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "The moon is starving, and so am I."
A chill raced down Lyric's spine. There was something about the way he said those words, something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Before she could ask what he meant, the boy's small hand suddenly clamped onto her wool cloak, his bony fingers digging into the fabric with surprising strength. "Don't make me go back," he pleaded, and now his eyes were filling with tears. "Please, they'll hunt me when it rises." "Who's hunting you?" Lyric asked gently. "My pack," his voice broke. "I'm the broken one, the cursed one." At those words, something strange happened. Lyric felt a sudden warmth bloom beneath her chemise, right at her collarbone where she'd always had a strange star-shaped birthmark. She'd been born with it, had always dismissed it as nothing more than a wine stain. but now it was pulsing with heat, as if responding to the boy's presence.
Lyric Voss. The voice cut through the twilight air like a blade. Lyric looked up to see Mistress Rowan standing at the edge of the market square. Her godmother was a severe woman, tall and angular, with silver hair coiled in a tight braid and amber eyes that always seemed to see too much. "Step away from the boy," Rowan commanded. Lyric stood slowly, instinctively moving between the child and her godmother. "He's starving, Rowan. I can't just leave him." "Some strays carry curses, child." Rowan's amber eyes fixed on the boy with an expression Lyric couldn't read. "Some are meant to be left in the wild." Behind her, the boy whimpered and pressed closer to her legs. Every rational part of Lyric's mind was screaming that she should listen to Rowan, that she should walk away. But something deeper, something she didn't understand, made her jaw set with stubborn defiance. "Then I'll take the curse," Lyric said firmly. She bent down and lifted the boy onto her hip, ignoring his sharp intake of breath. "He's coming home with me." For a moment, Rowan's severe expression flickered with something else. Was it pride or resignation? "So it begins," the old woman murmured so quietly Lyric almost didn't hear. "The moon always collects her debts."
Lyric's cottage sat at the edge of Eldermoor, a small stone building with a thatched roof and bundles of drying herbs hanging from the rafters. She deposited the boy on her straw pallet and wrapped him in her mother's old quilt. "What's your name?" she asked, stirring a pot of stew over the hearth. "Kale." His silver eyes tracked every shadow in the room, wary and alert. "You shouldn't have brought me here." "Why not?" "Because when the moon rises," his voice cracked with emotion, "I change." Lyric added wild onions to the stew, trying to keep her tone light. "Change how? Into a brat? You're already there." Despite everything, a ghost of a smile touched the boy's lips, but then his face suddenly contorted in pain. Lyric spun around, the ladle falling from her hand. The boy was arching backward on the pallet, his spine bowing at an unnatural angle. She watched in frozen horror as his fingernails lengthened into claws, his teeth sharpening into fangs. Silver fur rippled across his skin like water. Within seconds, a wolf cub stood where the boy had been, small and trembling, but undeniably a wolf. And that's when Lyric's birthmark ignited. Pain lanced through her collarbone, white-hot and blinding. She tore at her chemise, gasping as the star-shaped mark began to glow with molten gold light. It pulsed brighter and brighter, illuminating her entire cottage in waves of ethereal radiance. The wolf cub immediately pressed his muzzle to the floor, submissive and reverent. "What?" Lyric's voice shook. "What are you?" The cub shifted back, the transformation just as painful in reverse. Within moments, Kale collapsed onto the quilt in his human form, naked and sobbing. "Cursed," he choked out between gasping breaths. "I'm Prince Kalen Vesper. Beta Gideon locked me in this broken form. I can't hold my true shape anymore. The pack thinks I'm weak, so they cast me out to die." Lyric's knees buckled. She sank onto her wooden stool, mind reeling. "Prince? Vesper? You're saying you're royalty? That you're related to the Alpha King?" "He's my uncle." Kale's silver eyes met hers, and she saw ancient grief in that child's face. "Darius doesn't know I'm still alive. Gideon told him I died in a rogue attack 2 years ago, but the curse is killing me. Every shift tears me apart a little more. I have maybe 3 moons left before my body can't take it anymore." Lyric pressed her hand to her birthmark. The glow had faded now, leaving only a faint warmth against her skin. "And this?
What does my mark mean? Kale's voice filled with awe. You're star-marked. The ancient prophecy says the Alpha King's true queen will be human-born, star-marked, and rogue saved. You just saved a rogue prince. His breath hitched. You're supposed to save him too. Save my uncle. Save the kingdom. Before Lyric could process this insane revelation, her cottage door exploded inward. 3 massive wolves charged inside. They were huge, scarred, with ribs protruding from malnourished bodies. Their eyes glowed amber in the firelight, and their lips were peeled back from yellowed fangs. The largest wolf, a gray brute with a torn ear, shifted mid-lunge. Bones cracked and reformed, and suddenly, a naked, tattooed man stood in her cottage, his body covered in ritual scars.
Prince Kalen, the man rasped, his voice like gravel scraping stone. The pack needs you. We're starving. The conclave has cut us off from the hunting grounds. Kale scrambled behind Lyric, his small hands fisting in her skirt. I told you I'm useless. I can't even shift properly anymore. The rogue's gaze slid to Lyric, and his nostrils flared. Then we'll take the human. She smells like prophecy, like destiny. The lunar conclave will pay gold for her blood. Lyric grabbed the iron poker from beside her hearth, her hands steady despite the terror clawing up her throat. Touch him, and I'll shove this through your eye. The rogues laughed, a sound like broken glass, until her birthmark flared again. Golden light exploded outward from Lyric's collarbone, slamming into the wolves like a physical force. They yelped and scattered, crashing against the cottage walls. The gray rogue stared at her with wide, shocked eyes. "Star-forged," he whispered. "She's not just marked. She's got royal blood." Before Lyric could ask what that meant, the wolf lunged for Kale. She swung the poker with all her strength, caught him across the jaw with a sickening crunch, and grabbed the boy's hand. "Run!" They burst out into the night. Eldermore Market was deserted now, the stalls abandoned, lanterns swinging wildly in the wind. Behind them, howls split the darkness. Not just 3 wolves, dozens. "They've called the full pack," Kale gasped as they ran, his bare feet slapping against the cobblestones. "Lyric, they'll tear you apart." "Not if I can help it." She yanked him toward the merchant stables, where Tam the baker's cart sat hitched to a drowsy mare. Lyric vaulted onto the driver's bench, hauled Kale up beside her, and snapped the reins. The mare bolted forward, her hooves clattering on stone. The cartwheels skidded through mud as they careened down the narrow lanes leading out of town. Behind them, the rogues poured into the market square. Some were in human form, but most ran as wolves, their snarls echoing off the buildings. "They're gaining on us!" Kale twisted to look back, his face pale in the moonlight. Lyric urged the mare faster, weaving between abandoned stalls and overturned barrels. A wolf leapt onto the cart's tailgate, its claws scrabbling for purchase on the wooden planks. Without thinking, Lyric grabbed a sack of flour from the cargo and hurled it backward. The bag exploded in a white cloud, and the wolf tumbled off into the street, choking and blinded. "Where are we going?" Kale shouted over the chaos. "The Whispering Woods." "Are you insane? Everyone knows those woods are cursed." "So are we, apparently." Lyric snapped the reins again. "Hold on." They broke free of the market town, galloping down the forest road. The Whispering Woods loomed ahead like a wall of darkness, the ancient pines standing like black sentinels against the night sky. Every child in Vesperia grew up hearing stories about those woods. Travelers who entered never returned. Screams echoed at midnight. The trees themselves were said to hunger. But the rogues were only 30 paces behind them now and closing fast. Lyric drove the mare straight into the trees. Darkness swallowed them whole,
The card bounced violently over roots and rocks, branches lashing across Lyric's face and arms. She could hear the rogues crashing through the underbrush behind them, but their howls were growing more distant, more confused. The woods were having an effect on their pursuers. She didn't slow until they reached a clearing where a ruined stone well stood choked with ivy and moss. The mare was foaming at the mouth, exhausted. Lyric reined her in, chest heaving. Kale slumped against her side, shaking. "We can't stop for long. They'll track us by scent." Let them try. Lyric's birthmark was throbbing beneath her chemise, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. "I'm done running from things I don't understand." A low, rumbling growl answered her words. Every hair on Lyric's body stood on end. Slowly, she turned around in the driver's seat. A man stepped out from the shadows between the trees. No, not a man. Something more. He stood at least 6.5 feet tall, broad-shouldered and powerfully built. He wore a traveling cloak the color of storm clouds, and dark hair fell to his collar, framing a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. Sharp cheekbones, a brutal jaw, and eyes. Gods above, his eyes. They were amber gold, glowing faintly in the darkness, and they were fixed on Lyric with an intensity that made her knees weak and her breath catch in her throat. The scent hit her next. Pine smoke, rain on stone, something wild and utterly masculine that made her pulse spike in ways that had nothing to do with fear. His nostrils flared, his pupils dilated until only thin rings of gold remained. When he spoke, his voice was rough as gravel, vibrating through her very bones. "Mine."
Kale gasped beside her. "Uncle Darius?" But the Alpha King didn't acknowledge the boy. His entire focus was locked on Lyric, specifically on her throat, where her birthmark was glowing faintly through the thin fabric of her chemise. He moved toward the cart with predatory grace, each step deliberate and controlled. Lyric found herself unable to move, unable to breathe, unable to do anything but stare into those burning amber eyes. 300 years, Darius rasped. "I've searched for 300 years. He reached up toward her with one large hand, claws extending from his fingertips. And then Kale, still in his human form, bit him. The boy's teeth sank into his uncle's wrist, drawing blood. Darius jerked back, shock breaking through his predatory focus. Kyle positioned his small body between them, trembling but defiant. "She saved me," the boy said fiercely. "You don't get to just claim her like some prize." For the first time, Darius truly looked at his nephew. Recognition dawned in those amber eyes, followed by anguish so raw that it made Lyric's heart clench painfully. "Kyle?" The Alpha King dropped to one knee, and his voice cracked with emotion. "They told me you were dead. Gideon said, he said rogues killed you." "Gideon cursed me." Kyle's silver eyes brimmed with tears. "He wants your throne, uncle. He's planning to kill you during the blood moon eclipse." Darius's expression hardened into something lethal and cold. He rose slowly to his full height. "When?" 12 hours from now. Kale's voice wavered. "He said the veil between worlds will shatter if you die without a mate, that creatures from the void will pour through." Lyric's mind was racing, trying to process everything. Eclipse, mate, prophecy, veils between worlds? This was madness. She was just an apothecary from a market town, not some mystical queen from an ancient prophecy. But her birthmark pulsed again, responding to the Alpha King's proximity like a lodestone drawn to true north. Darius clenched his jaw. "Then we have until dawn." He finally looked directly at Lyric, and something in his brutal expression softened. "I apologize. The mate bond, when it finally snaps into place after centuries of waiting, control becomes difficult." "You think?"
Lyric's voice came out sharper than she intended, fear and adrenaline making her reckless. "You just growled 'mine' at a complete stranger like I'm a piece of meat." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "You're not a stranger, Lyric Voss. I've dreamed of your laughter for 300 years. I thought I was losing my mind."
The air between them seemed to crackle with invisible energy. Lyric felt it, a golden thread pulling taut, connecting her chest to his. It terrified her and thrilled her in equal measure. Part of her wanted to run, another part wanted to lean closer. "We need to move," Darius said, his voice more controlled now. "The rogues will regroup and track us here, and if Gideon learns that you're star-marked," his eyes darkened, "he'll stop at nothing to kill you before the eclipse." "Why?" Lyric demanded. "What does my birthmark have to do with any of this?" "Everything." Darius stepped closer to the cart. This time when he raised his hand, he moved slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his calloused fingers brushed against her collarbone, tracing the star-shaped mark through the fabric. Heat bloomed under his touch, spreading through her body like wildfire. "You're the king's true mate," he murmured, his voice low and almost hypnotic. "The one prophesized to stabilize the veil and unite all the packs. Without you, my bloodline ends. The kingdom falls into chaos, and creatures far worse than rogues will pour through the cracks in reality." Lyric swallowed hard. "No pressure, then." His amber eyes gleamed with dark amusement. "I knew I was going to like you." A branch snapped somewhere in the forest.
Darius's head whipped around, nostrils flaring. "They've found our scent. We need to reach the Lunar Conclave Sanctuary before—" "Too late, brother." A new figure emerged from between the pines. He was tall and lean, with the same amber eyes as Darius, but somehow colder, crueler. His smile was like a knife's edge. Behind him, a dozen wolves with red-painted muzzles stepped into the clearing. Battle wolves, trained killers. Beta Gideon had found them. "Did you really think I'd let you reach the conclave?" Gideon's voice was smooth as poison. "The boy was bait, the girl is leverage, and you, dear brother." His gaze fixed on Darius with centuries of bitter hatred. "You're already dead." The battle wolves attacked. Chaos erupted in the clearing. Darius shifted mid-lunge, his body exploding into the form of a massive black wolf with burning amber eyes. He was twice the size of any normal wolf, pure muscle and lethal grace. He met the first attacker head-on, his jaws closing around the battle wolf's throat. "Kale, stay behind me!" Lyric grabbed a fallen branch from the cart, brandishing it like a club. Her heart was hammering, but her hands were steady. Two wolves circled her position, lips peeled back from their fangs. She swung the branch wildly, catching one across the snout. It yelped and retreated, but the other lunged for her throat. Kale shifted. For the first time since Lyric had met him, the boy's transformation was clean and controlled. He became a silver wolf, smaller than the others, but fierce and fast. He intercepted the attacker in mid-air, his teeth sinking into its haunch. They rolled across the clearing in a snarling tangle of fur and blood. From the edge of the chaos, Gideon watched with his arms crossed, utterly serene. "Touching," he called out mockingly. "The Broken Prince plays hero." Darius in his wolf form fought through three rogues simultaneously, trying to reach his treacherous brother. But Gideon's forces kept coming, wave after wave of battle-trained wolves throwing themselves at the Alpha King. Lyric saw what was happening. They were being overwhelmed. Even Darius, powerful as he was, couldn't fight this many opponents at once. Kale was already tiring, his smaller form no match for the larger wolves. They were going to die here in this clearing, unless she did something. Her birthmark was burning now, pulsing with golden light beneath her chemise. She could feel power thrumming through her veins, ancient and vast. She didn't understand it, didn't know how to control it, but she knew instinctively that it was responding to Darius's danger. "Get away from them!" Lyric screamed. Golden light erupted from her body, expanding outward in a shockwave that slammed into every wolf in the clearing. The battle wolves were thrown backward, crashing into trees. Even Darius was forced to retreat several steps, his amber wolf eyes wide with shock. The light faded, leaving Lyric swaying on the cart, exhausted but still standing. Gideon's mocking smile had vanished. He stared at her with naked hunger. "Star-forged, even more powerful than the prophecy suggested. If I drain your blood during the eclipse, I'll have enough power to claim the throne myself." He raised one hand, and shadows began to gather around his fingers. Dark magic, forbidden and ancient. "Run," he commanded his wolves. "Take the girl, kill the king." The battle wolves surged forward again, but this time they moved with coordinated precision, surrounding Darius and cutting him off from Lyric. Gideon himself stalked toward the cart, shadows writhing around him like living things. "You're coming with me, little star, whether you want to or not."
"I think not." A woman's voice rang out across the clearing, strong and commanding. Mistress Rowan stepped from the trees, but she looked nothing like the severe godmother Lyric had known all her life. Her eyes glowed amber gold, silver fur rippled along her arms. She stood between Gideon and the cart, and power radiated from her like heat from a forge. "Rowan?" Lyric gasped. You're one of them?" "I'm an elder of the Lunar Conclave, child." Rowan didn't take her eyes off Gideon. "I've been watching over you since you were born, since we found you abandoned on the temple steps with nothing but that star mark on your skin." Lyric's world tilted. "What are you saying?" "You're not human, Lyric. You never were." Rowan's voice was gentle, despite the chaos around them. "You're star-forged, ancient werewolf royalty from a bloodline we thought extinct. Your parents left you at the temple to protect you from those who would drain your power." "Like me," Gideon snarled. "The Conclave should have killed her as an infant. Instead, you hid her away, waiting for this moment. We followed the prophecy, and the prophecy has chosen. She is the Alpha King's true mate. You cannot change destiny, Gideon. Watch me."
Gideon unleashed his shadowy power, and it slammed into Rowan like a battering ram. The elder was thrown backward, crashing through the underbrush. Before Lyric could scream, before Darius could reach them, Gideon was at the cart. His hand closed around her throat. "Come quietly," he hissed, "or I'll kill the boy right now." Kyle, still in wolf form, was pinned beneath two battle wolves. His silver eyes found Lyric's, and she saw the terror there. He was just a child. Cursed, broken, but still just a child who'd already suffered so much. "Don't," Kyle tried to say through his wolf mouth, "don't give up for me." But Lyric was already climbing down from the cart, Gideon's hand still at her throat. "Let him go. I'll come with you." "Lyric, no!" Darius's voice, harsh and commanding, even in wolf form, echoed through the clearing. He tried to reach her, but the battle wolves surrounded him, snapping at his legs and throat. Such noble sacrifice, the perfect queen. He began dragging her toward the darkness of the forest. "The eclipse begins in 6 hours. That gives me plenty of time to prepare the ritual. Your blood will make me unstoppable. And when Darius comes to save you, as he inevitably will, I'll be waiting with a blade dipped in wolfsbane and silver." He carved something into a nearby tree as they passed, moving so fast Lyric barely saw the motion. Deep gouges in the bark formed words. Deliver the king to the ruined abbey by moonrise, or the girl dies. The perfect trap, Gideon whispered in her ear. He'll come for you. They always do for their mates. And then I'll kill him while you watch. Back in the clearing, Rowan had pulled herself upright, bleeding from a gash on her temple. Darius shifted back to human form, his body covered in bite marks and claw wounds. Kale was human again too, wrapped in Lyric's cloak from the cart, sobbing. "It's my fault," the boy choked out. "If I hadn't been cursed, if I'd been strong enough—" "This isn't your fault." Darius knelt beside his nephew, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Gideon has been planning this for decades. He would have found another way." "What do we do?" Rowan asked. "The abbey is a trap. He'll have dozens of rogues waiting, all armed with wolf's bane and silver. If you go there, you'll die." "I know." Darius's amber eyes were hard as stone. "But I'm going anyway." "You can't." Kale grabbed his uncle's arm. "That's what he wants. He wants you to die so he can take the throne." "He has my mate." The words came out as a growl. "He has the woman I've waited 300 years to find. I don't care if it's a trap. I don't care if there are 100 rogues with silver daggers. I'm getting her back." Rowan studied him for a long moment. "The mate bond is already strong, even though it hasn't been completed. You'd walk into death for her, without hesitation. Then we need a better plan than a suicidal charge." The elder began to pace, thinking. "Gideon's arrogant. He thinks he's already won. That gives us an advantage." "What kind of advantage?" Darius asked. Rowan smiled grimly. "He doesn't know that Kale's curse can be broken, not by any normal means, but—" She looked at the boy. "During a blood moon eclipse, the veil between worlds grows thin. Magic becomes unstable. If Lyric's star blood touches you while the moon is fully eclipsed, the curse will shatter." Kale's eyes widened. "I could shift properly again? Hold my true form? You could become what you were always meant to be, a true prince of the Vesper line, as powerful as your uncle." Darius was already nodding, seeing the strategy. 2 alpha wolves instead of 1. That changes the odds. "But we still have to reach Lyric before Gideon completes his ritual," Rowan warned. "If he drains her star blood before the eclipse reaches its peak, her power will transfer to him. He'll be unstoppable." "Then we move now." Darius grabbed weapons from the cart. Iron chains, wolfsbane arrows that Lyric must have kept for protection, a silver dagger. "Rowan, gather any conclave members who are loyal. Meet us at the abbey. Kale, you're with me." "I can barely fight," the boy protested. "You can be bait." Darius's smile was predatory. "Gideon thinks you're helpless. Let's use that." The ruined abbey of St. Marana sat deep in the whispering woods, its broken walls covered in ivy and moss. It had been abandoned for centuries, ever since the plague swept through Vesperia. Now it served as a hideout for rogues and outcasts. And tonight, it was Gideon's ritual chamber. Lyric hung from iron chains in what had once been the abbey's chapel. Her wrists were raw and bleeding where the shackles bit into her skin. Her birthmark was glowing so brightly now that it illuminated the ruined walls, casting everything in golden light. Gideon paced before her, dragging a silver blade across a whetstone. The sound made her teeth ache. "The eclipse begins in 1 hour," he said, conversationally. "Your beloved will arrive soon. He won't be able to help himself. The mate bond will drive him here like a fish on a hook." "He'll kill you," Lyric said hoarsely. Her throat was dry, her body exhausted from the power her birthmark kept trying to release.
"Will he?" Gideon held up the blade, examining its edge. This silver was forged in a dying star, quenched in the blood of the last star-forged werewolf. It's the only weapon that can permanently kill an Alpha King. One thrust through the heart, and Darius Vesper will finally die. After 300 years of watching him rule, of being dismissed as the bastard brother, I'll finally take what's mine. You're his brother? Half-brother, same father, different mother. My mother was human, which made me lesser in their eyes. Not pure enough, not strong enough. His voice dripped with bitterness. Do you know what it's like to be second best for 3 centuries? To watch from the shadows while everyone bows to the golden sun? So you cursed an innocent child? You're planning to murder your own brother? That doesn't make you strong, Gideon. It makes you pathetic.
He backhanded her across the face. Pain exploded through her jaw and she tasted blood. Careful, little star. I need you alive for the ritual, but I can make you suffer first. Footsteps echoed through the ruined abbey. Battlewolves emerged from the shadows, at least 20 of them, all with red-painted muzzles. They formed a perimeter around the chapel, their eyes glowing in the darkness. And now, Gideon said with satisfaction, we wait for the guest of honor. They didn't have to wait long.
Darius arrived like a storm. He came through the abbey's broken front gate in full Alpha King form, a massive black wolf the size of a warhorse, with fur that seemed to drink in the moonlight and eyes that burned like molten gold. His howl shook the ancient stones, and the battle wolves guarding the entrance scattered before him. Kale followed in his small silver wolf form, staying close to his uncle's side. There he is, Gideon breathed, right on schedule. He stepped out into the ruined courtyard, the silver blade gleaming in his hand. The rain was falling harder now, turning the ground to mud. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the scene in flashes of white light. "Hello, brother," Gideon called out. "Come for your mate?" Darius shifted back to human form, standing naked in the rain, utterly unashamed of his scarred, powerful body. His amber eyes locked onto Lyric, who was visible through the chapel's broken walls. Relief and rage warred in his expression. "Let her go, Gideon. This is between us." "Everything is between us," Gideon snarled. "Every moment of the last 300 years has been about you and me, the favored son and the bastard, the king and the shadow. Well, tonight the shadow rises." He gestured, and his battle wolves surged forward.
Darius shifted mid-charge, meeting the attack head-on. He moved like liquid violence, tearing through battle wolves with brutal efficiency. His jaws closed around throats, his claws ripped open flanks. Blood sprayed across the muddy ground, mixing with rain. Kyle darted to the chaos, smaller and faster than the larger wolves. He went for legs and bellies, using his size as an advantage. But Lyric could see he was struggling. The curse still weakened him. Every movement was costing him. More rogues poured from the abbey's ruins. Too many. Even an Alpha King couldn't fight this many opponents. Gideon watched it all with a cold smile, staying safely back from the combat. He was waiting for his moment, waiting for Darius to tire. "Stop!" Lyric screamed. "Gideon, please, just let them go. Take my blood, take whatever you want. Just don't hurt them." "Oh, I intend to take everything," Gideon said softly. He glanced at the sky, where clouds were beginning to part. And look, the eclipse begins. The moon emerged from behind the clouds, but it was wrong. Dark red was spreading across its surface like blood in water. The blood moon eclipse had begun. The instant the red light touched the ground, Lyric's birthmark exploded with power. The chains holding her shattered. She fell to her knees, gasping as golden energy poured from her body in waves. The power was overwhelming, ancient and vast, and she had no idea how to control it. In the courtyard, Darius faltered. A battle wolf caught him across the ribs, tearing deep. He roared in pain, but more wolves pressed in, sensing weakness. Now, Gideon charged forward, the star-forged blade raised high. He moved with supernatural speed, crossing the courtyard in seconds. The blade flashed downward, aimed directly at Darius's heart. Time seemed to slow. Lyric saw it happening, saw Gideon's triumphant smile, saw Darius, too surrounded by battle wolves to dodge, saw Kael, too small and too far away to help, and she felt the power inside her respond to her desperation. No! Golden light erupted from Lyric's body, a column of pure energy that shot into the sky. It slammed into Gideon mid-strike, throwing him backward across the courtyard. The star-forged blade flew from his hand, spinning through the air. The light expanded outward, and where it touched the battle wolves, they simply stopped, frozen in place like statues, their eyes wide and unseeing. Lyric staggered forward from the chapel, her birthmark blazing like a star. She didn't understand what was happening to her, but she didn't fight it. She let the power flow. Impossible, Gideon gasped from where he'd fallen. You shouldn't be able to channel that much. You're untrained. She doesn't need training. Rowan emerged from the trees at the edge of the abbey, flanked by 6 other wolves, all with amber eyes, the conclave elders. Star-forged power responds to the heart, not the mind, and her heart has chosen. Lyric staggered toward Darius. He'd shifted back to human form, clutching the wounds on his ribs. Blood poured between his fingers. The star-forged blade had grazed him before Lyric's power threw Gideon back. The wound was deep, too deep. No! No! Lyric fell to her knees beside him, her hands hovering over the injury. Don't you dare die! I just found you! Worth it. Darius managed a pained smile. To see you safe. Idiot! Tears streamed down her face. Stupid, self-sacrificing idiot! Her birthmark was still glowing, still pulsing with power, and suddenly she understood what Rowan had told Kael. The eclipse, starblood, the breaking of curses. She pressed her glowing hand against Darius's wound. What are you? His words cut off as her power flooded into him. Golden light spread from her palm, racing through his veins, illuminating his body from within. The gash on his ribs began to close, flesh knitting back together, bones reforming. But it was more than just healing. Lyric could feel the mate bond completing, snapping fully into place. It was like a golden chain wrapping around both their hearts, binding them together in a way that went beyond physical, beyond mortal. Darius's eyes flew open, blazing with golden light. He sucked in a breath, his hand covering hers. Lyric. I've got you, she whispered. I've got you. The eclipse was nearly complete now. The moon hung overhead like a bleeding eye, bathing everything in crimson light. The veil between worlds was thinning. Lyric could feel it, like cobwebs brushing against her skin, barely holding reality together. Kael, she called. Come here, quickly. The silver wolf limped toward her, exhausted from the battle. Lyric kept one hand on Darius's chest, feeling his heart beating strong and steady beneath her palm. With her other hand, she reached for Kael. The curse, she said urgently. Rowan said my star blood can break it during the eclipse. Let me try. Kael shifted to human form, the boy's silver eyes wide with hope and fear. What if it doesn't work? Then we're no worse off than before. But if it does work, she smiled through her tears, you'll finally be free. She pressed her glowing hand to his chest, right over his heart. Her power surged again, searching through his small body for the curse. She found it, a twisted knot of dark magic wrapped around his wolf spirit, strangling it, preventing him from holding his true form. With the eclipse at its peak, her star blood blazing with ancient power, Lyric grabbed that knot and pulled. Kale screamed, his body convulsed, arching backward. Dark smoke poured from his mouth, his eyes, his skin, the curse being ripped out by its roots. The smoke formed into a shadowy shape above him, writhing and shrieking, before the red moonlight burned it away to nothing. And then Kale shifted. But this time, the shift was different. His body didn't stop at wolf cub size. It kept growing, bones lengthening, muscles expanding. Within seconds, a massive silver wolf stood before them, nearly as large as Darius's alpha form, with eyes like liquid mercury and fur that seemed to shimmer with starlight. The curse was broken. Prince Kalen Vesper had been restored. "I can feel it," Kale's mental voice echoed with awe and joy. In wolf form, he could speak mind to mind. "I'm whole. I'm finally whole." "Well, isn't this touching?" Gideon's voice dripped with venom. He'd pulled himself upright, blood running from his nose and mouth. But he'd retrieved his star-forged blade. "The broken prince restored, the dying king healed. But you've forgotten something, little star." He lunged at Lyric with the blade. Darius moved to intercept, but he was still weak from the healing. He wouldn't reach her in time. Kale, however, was already moving. The silver wolf slammed into Gideon mid-lunge, his jaws closing around the beta's sword arm. Bone crunched. The blade fell. Kyle threw Gideon across the courtyard like a rag doll, his newly restored power making him devastating. "You cursed me." Kyle's mental voice was cold as winter. "You told my uncle I was dead. You tried to destroy our entire family. For what? For a throne you were never meant to sit on?" Gideon tried to crawl away, but Kyle planted one massive paw on his chest, pinning him. "Mercy!" Gideon gasped. "Please, I'm your uncle. I'm family." "You stopped being family the moment you put that curse on me." Kyle looked to Darius, who had pulled himself to his feet with Lyric's help. "What should we do with him, my king?" Darius's expression was carved from stone. The lunar conclave will decide his fate, but he'll live long enough to face justice. He looked at the elders who had gathered at the edge of the courtyard. "Take him. Lock him in the silver cells beneath the conclave's temple. We'll hold a trial after the coronation." Two of the elders shifted to human form and hauled Gideon to his feet. The beta was broken, defeated, all his schemes turned to ash. As they dragged him away, he looked back at Lyric with naked hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. "The conclave will never accept a human queen. They'll find a way to—" Rowan struck him across the face. "Be silent, traitor. You've said enough." The eclipse was passing. The red was fading from the moon, normal silver light returning. The veil between worlds stabilized, sealing shut once more. The battle wolves that Lyric's power had frozen began to stir, coming back to themselves. Without Gideon's dark magic controlling them, they were just rogues, starving, desperate, but not evil. "Let them go," Darius commanded. "Give them safe passage to the Eastern Territories. They can petition the Conclave for pact membership there." The rogues fled into the forest, grateful to escape with their lives. Lyric sagged against Darius, exhaustion finally catching up to her. Her birthmark had stopped glowing, returning to its normal appearance, but she could still feel the power sleeping inside her, vast and ancient, waiting to be called upon. "Is it over?" she asked quietly. Darius wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. He was still naked, covered in blood and mud, but she'd never felt safer. The battle is over, but our story, he tilted her chin up, his amber eyes warm, our story is just beginning. He kissed her.
It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was hungry, desperate, full of 300 years of waiting and longing. Lyric melted into it, her hands fisting in his hair, her body pressed against his. The mate bond sang between them, golden and unbreakable. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Darius rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me," he murmured. "Be my queen, my mate, my everything." "We just met," Lyric pointed out, but she was smiling. "I've known you in my dreams for 3 centuries. I'd say we've had a long enough courtship." "Then yes," she kissed him again, softer this time. "Yes, you impossible, infuriating Alpha King. I'll marry you." KL, still in his magnificent silver wolf form, howled his approval. The sound echoed through the whispering woods, and from far away, other wolves answered. The packs were celebrating. Their king had found his queen at last.
The Lunar Conclave's temple stood at the heart of the Whispering Woods, a massive structure of white stone that gleamed in the moonlight. Its columns were carved with ancient wolves, and its central courtyard was open to the sky, designed for ceremonies held beneath the moon's gaze. Tonight, that courtyard was packed with werewolves from every pack in Vesperia. Alphas and betas, warriors and healers, old bloodlines and new. They had all come to witness what hadn't happened in 300 years, the coronation of a queen. Lyric stood at the edge of the courtyard, dressed in a gown hastily assembled by the conclave seamstresses. It was simpler than a traditional coronation gown, made of midnight blue silk with silver embroidery that traced patterns like starlight. They'd woven moon silver into her hair, and around her throat she wore a collar of market pearls, the one she'd bartered for at her stall just yesterday. Yesterday? Was it really only yesterday that she'd found a starving boy stealing honey cakes? It felt like a lifetime ago. "Nervous?" Rowan asked beside her. The elder had cleaned up, her silver hair freshly braided, her formal robes marking her as one of the conclave's senior members. "Terrified," Lyric admitted. "Half these wolves probably want me dead. I'm human, or mostly human. I still don't fully understand what I am." "You're star-forged, the last of an ancient bloodline that predates the current packs by millennia. You're more royal than most of the wolves in that courtyard." "That just makes them more likely to hate me." Rowan's expression softened. "Some will resist. Change is always frightening. But Darius has chosen you, and he is the Alpha King. His word is law, and more than that." She gestured toward the courtyard. "Look at them, child. Really look." Lyric peered through the archway. The gathered wolves weren't glaring at her with hostility. Most looked curious. Many looked hopeful. And the rogues who'd attacked her in the market were there too, cleaned and fed, watching her with something like reverence. "You fed them," Rowan said quietly. "Not just the rogues, but Kale when he was starving. You shared your last honey cake with a stranger. You fought battle wolves to protect a cursed prince. You walked into Gideon's trap to save them. The packs respect strength, yes, but they also respect honor. And you, Lyric Voss, have more honor in your little finger than most wolves have in their entire bodies." "It's time," Rowan said. "Are you ready?" Lyric took a deep breath. "No, but let's do this anyway." She stepped into the courtyard. Every eye turned to her, hundreds of amber gazes glowing in the torchlight. The weight of their attention was crushing. Lyric forced herself to keep walking, her chin up, her spine straight. She wouldn't show fear, not now. At the far end of the courtyard, on a raised dais of white stone, Darius waited. He was magnificent, dressed in black leather and dark furs, with a circlet of moon silver on his brow marking him as the Alpha King. His amber eyes tracked her every movement as she walked toward him, and the mate bond between them pulled taut with longing. Beside him stood Kyle, back in human form now, dressed in the formal robes of a Vesper prince. The boy, no, the young man, for he looked older now that the curse was broken, smiled at her encouragingly. Lyric climbed the steps to the dais. Darius reached out his hand and she took it. His skin was warm, his grip strong and steady. "You look like starlight," he murmured, for her ears only. "You look like trouble," she whispered back, and his eyes gleamed with amusement. Rowan stepped forward to officiate. The elder raised her hands and the courtyard fell into complete silence.
"We are gathered beneath the moon's gaze to witness the fulfillment of prophecy." Rowan's voice rang out clear and strong. 300 years ago, the seers foretold that the Alpha King would find his true mate, one who was human-born, star-marked, and rogue-saved. Tonight, that prophecy has come to pass. She turned to Lyric. "Do you, Lyric Voss, accept the responsibilities of queenship? Will you stand beside the Alpha King as his mate, his partner, and his equal? Will you help him guide the packs through the darkness and into the light?" Lyric's voice didn't waver. "I will. And do you, Darius Vesper, accept this woman as your true mate? Will you honor her, protect her, and rule beside her for all your days?" "With my last breath," Darius said fiercely. "Then by the power vested in me by the lunar conclave, Wait!" An ancient wolf stepped forward from the crowd. He was massive, even in human form, with pure white hair and eyes that had faded to pale gold with age. He wore the robes of a conclave elder, but his markings indicated he was something more. The High Elder, the oldest living werewolf in Vesperia. "High Elder Theron," Rowan said carefully, "do you object to this union?" "I do not object," the ancient wolf said, his voice surprisingly strong. "But I do challenge." Darius stiffened beside Lyric, his hand tightening on hers. "What challenge?" "The laws are ancient and clear. A human cannot rule the packs. If Lyric Voss is truly star-forged, if she truly carries royal blood, then let her prove it." Farron's pale eyes fixed on Lyric. "Shift, girl. Show us your wolf." Lyric's heart plummeted. I don't know how. I've never shifted before. I didn't even know I wasn't fully human until yesterday." "Then you cannot be queen." Theron's voice was implacable. "The law is clear. Only those who can shift can lead." "She saved my life," Darius growled, his voice dropping into his alpha register. "She broke an ancient curse. She channeled enough star blood to heal me from a mortal wound. Are you truly going to deny her based on a technicality?" "It is not a technicality. It is our most sacred law." Farron looked around at the gathered packs. Who here would follow a queen who cannot shift, who cannot run beneath the moon, who cannot understand what it means to be wolf? Murmurs spread through the courtyard, some supportive, but others uncertain. Lyric could feel the tide turning against her. "I will challenge the law," Darius snarled. "I am the Alpha King. My word supersedes tradition." "And what happens when you're gone? When you die and she's left to rule alone? The packs will rebel. There will be war. You would doom her to that future?" Lyric felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she blinked them back. She wouldn't cry, not in front of hundreds of watching wolves. She'd known this was too good to be true. A market girl becoming queen? It was a fantasy. She started to pull her hand from Darius's, started to step back from the dais. And then her birthmark pulsed. It wasn't like before, when it had exploded with power. This was gentler. It felt like a mother's touch, like an old friend reaching out. And with it came a voice,
not in her ears, but in her very soul. "You are more than you know, daughter of starlight. You have always been Wolf. You simply forgot how to remember." The voice was ancient, vast, impossible to describe, and Lyric knew, instinctively, that it was the voice of the first Star-Forged speaking to her across millennia.
Let go. Let yourself be what you were always meant to be. Lyric? Darius's voice was concerned. What's happening? I don't know, she whispered. But I think I need to try. She stepped away from him, away from the safety of his presence, and moved to the center of the dais. The gathered packs watched in silence. Even Theron looked curious now, rather than condemnatory. Lyric closed her eyes. She thought about the boy she'd fed in the market, the wolves she'd fought to protect, the mate bond thrumming between her and Darius, the power sleeping in her blood. Pain ripped through her body, but it was different from the agony she'd seen in Kale's cursed shifts. This was the pain of something being born, of potential becoming reality. Her bones reshaped, her muscles reformed, fur erupted across her skin, not silver like Kale's or black like Darius's. Golden, pure, radiant gold like captured sunlight.
When the shift completed, Lyric stood on 4 paws, her head held high. She was smaller than Darius's wolf form, but larger than most females, with fur that seemed to glow with inner light. Her eyes, when she opened them, were still the same warm brown, but now they held ancient wisdom, the knowledge of her bloodline flooding back into her. She was star-forged, she was royal, she was wolf, and she was queen. Therion stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, the ancient elder dropped to one knee. "Forgive me, your majesty, I did not know. The last star-forged wolf was seen 1,000 years ago. I thought the bloodline extinct." One by one, the gathered packs followed his lead. Alphas and rogues, warriors and healers, all of them kneeling before the golden wolf on the dais. Darius shifted to stand beside her, his massive black wolf form complementing her gold. He pressed his muzzle against hers, and through the mate bond she felt his fierce pride and love. "My queen, my mate, my everything." Lyric shifted back to human form, standing naked and unashamed in the moonlight, just as Darius did the same. The conclave attendants rushed forward with robes, but Darius waved them off. This was a moment of raw truth, of vulnerability and strength combined.
"I am Lyric Voss," she said, her voice carrying across the silent courtyard. "Daughter of Starlight, Queen of Vesperia, and I swear to you all that I will lead with honor, fight for the weak, and never forget that I started as a market girl with nothing but honey cakes and hope." The courtyard erupted in howls of approval. Rowan completed the ceremony, placing a circlet of moon silver on Lyric's head. It was lighter than she expected, but its weight was still significant. This was real. She was really a queen now. Darius pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, not caring that hundreds of wolves were watching. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he whispered against her lips, "Ready for the rest of your life, your majesty?" "With you?" she smiled. "Absolutely." Hours later, when the celebration had finally wound down and most of the packs had departed for their territories, Lyric and Darius stood on a balcony of the Conclave's temple. Below them,
The lights of Eldermore Market were just beginning to glow in the pre-dawn darkness. Lyric was wrapped in Darius's arms, her back against his chest, his chin resting on top of her head. She'd never felt so safe, so complete. "Tomorrow we'll travel to the capital," Darius murmured. "There's a proper castle there, with a throne room and courtiers, and all the things a queen is supposed to have." "Sounds dreadful," Lyric said, but she was smiling. "It is, rather. Lots of boring meetings and political maneuvering." His arms tightened around her. "But we'll face it together." "Together," she agreed softly. Kael appeared in the doorway behind them, still looking slightly amazed by his restored form. "Am I interrupting?" "Always," Darius said, but his tone was fond. "What is it?" "The rogues we pardoned wanted me to give you a message. They've pledged their loyalty to the new queen. Said anyone who shares her last honey cake with a stranger is worth following."
Lyric felt tears prick her eyes. "Tell them I'm honored." Kael grinned. "Also, Tam the baker's here. Says he wants his cart back, but he'll forgive the theft if the queen agrees to buy his bread exclusively for the royal household." "Deal," Lyric laughed. "Gods, yesterday I was bartering for coppers. Today I'm making trade agreements." "Strange how life works," Darius murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun begin to rise over Vesperia. Golden light spread across the kingdom, illuminating forests and towns, castles and market squares. "The moon was starving," Lyric said quietly, remembering Kael's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "But so was I. And now?" She turned in his arms, looking up into his amber eyes. "Now I'm full. Of hope, of love, of purpose." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for finding me." "Thank you for letting yourself be found."
As the sun rose fully, bathing them both in golden light, Lyric felt the future spreading out before them. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, enemies, political intrigue. Some wolves would never fully accept her. The conclave would have its own agenda. But she had Darius. She had Kael. She had Rowan and the loyal Pax. And she had her own strength, her own power, her own voice. The market girl had become a queen. And this was only the beginning. Thank you for listening to this tale of the market girl who became a queen. If you enjoyed Lyric and Darius's story, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the strays we save end up saving us right back.